And welcome back. We are now going to go ahead and get ready to make a very simple scene. We've kind of have played around with this a little bit, but now we're going to kind of bring in some of the different pieces that we've done to go ahead and make this. So to get started, let's go ahead and start here with our object. And we want to go ahead and first let's bring that up. So I'm going to do G, Z, and then 1 just to bring that up. That looks great. And I'm going to go ahead and switch this into edit mode. And let's go ahead and do a face select here. And let's go ahead and grab this back face here. And since I live in an agriculture community, I might say, you know what, I want to make something like a farm. And maybe I want to make like a small little barn here with maybe a silo or something like that. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm just going to go ahead and with this face selected, let's go ahead and extend that out a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and do G, Y, and so that it's along the Y axis. And let's just go ahead and just double that. So I'm just going to go ahead and press 2. That will just extend that automatically and click that. And you can see we've now gone ahead and extended that building. All right, next let's go ahead and build the roof here. So I'm just going to go ahead and select that roof. And I want to extrude that up. And so I'm just going to go ahead and extrude that in the upward direction there. And that looks good. And I might say, you know, I want to make this just have a little bit of scaling here. But I want to scale that along just a certain axis here. So maybe I say I want that along the X axis. And so I'm just going to bring that in just a little bit here. That looks good. And then we'll go ahead and extrude again. And then just bring that up some more. And what we want to do this time is when we go to scale that, remember we want to bring that into a point of 0. So let's just go ahead X, or let's try Y, there we go, and do 0. And if it doesn't get the, we don't get the point that we want here, so try X, 0, there we go, that looks good. And we have our roof. And you can see it's starting to take kind of a barn-like shape here. Now one thing we might want to do is remove our vertices in here. We might want to clean this up just a little bit here. So I might want to say, you know, I want to go ahead and select these here and I want to clean up my vertices. So remember, we can go ahead and just merge in here by distance and that'll clean that up real nicely for us. Now, one thing I might say is that, you know, this barn is good, but maybe I want it just a little bit wider. Maybe I want the barn to be just a little bit bigger. Well, one thing we can do is I can go ahead and select this side, rotate around, hold down the shift key, select this side, and then I can just scale this. So let's do scale. And if I do by 1.5, you can see it gets a much larger, but so that's scaled everything. So we don't want to scale in every direction. So let's just scale, let's say in the X direction. And let's do 1.5. And you can see it will make that barn much bigger. All right, that's not quite what we want. Maybe scale in the X 1.25. All right, and there we go. We got a barn that's just a little bit wider for us to look at. Now, one side effect of scaling the base is that our roof is not exactly the same proportions it was before. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my edge select here. Let's go ahead and select this edge and this edge. And then we're going to go ahead and scale again in the X direction. And we're going to go ahead and just bring that out a little bit. And you can see we don't have anything weird because we, again, cleaned up those vertices before. And now that that's scaled, you can see that's, again, getting kind of more of that familiar, almost like shed or barn-like shape that we might be much more familiar with. All right, and maybe I would say with this barn, maybe I want to have kind of another roof here or canopy, or you know, maybe there's an extension that was put out here. So I'm going to go ahead and grab this edge here. And what I want to do is extrude that out so that way it's going to come on out and kind of act as an angle coming out of here. So I want to make sure I got my edge selected. I'm going to press E, and you can see I can now have this edge kind of extruding out. And we, of course, have this. If we do G and Z, we can, of course, you know, restrict this if we need to. But I'm just going to go ahead and kind of bring this out a little bit here. And you can see we have a nice edge kind of hanging out over our barn. Now, there's no supports here, so we can add those in here as we go along through this. So one thing to keep in mind here before I add the post is that this particular shape is simply just a side. We don't really have much to mention. So let's go back to our face select here, grab this top face, and we want to extrude that up just a little bit. So I'm going to do extrude. I'm going to do that in the, I want to go up and down. So let's go in the Y direction here, or Z direction, sorry. And we just want to bring that up just slightly to give it just a little bit of thickness. Not too much, just a little bit of thickness. Because again, that's just going to add a little three-dimensional property to it. And, you know, if we look at that and we say, oh, that looks good, or we might say that we want that a little bit thicker, we can, again, come back to that, extrude that, make sure we're along the Z-axis, and we can, of course, just bring that up a little bit if we want to. So that's a perfectly good option if we want to do that. But let's go ahead and add some support posts in here. So we're going to need to insert some more shapes here to kind of really kind of make this come to life. So let's go ahead and add ourselves in another cube here. And we want to take this cube here and we want to scale that down. So let's scale that down. And let's do this in the X and Y positions here. So we'll take each of those down by, let's say, to 0.25. Just to start. 0 in the X. All right. And if we were to move this guy, just to bring him out here, and we want to make sure we restrict that, let's just do G and X just to bring it out. You can see it's still quite large, so I might want to say, you know, I want to scale this down a little further. So I'm going to do a scale in the X. Let's just do that by 0.5. And let's do a scale in the Y by 0.5. Okay, now our post is looking a little bit more proportional to what we might want it to be, but I would say it's still a little large. So I'm actually going to scale that down just one more time by 0.5. There we go. That looks pretty darn good. Now that I have this post in place here, I can go ahead then and just move this into place here. So let's go just grab that and move them into place. And you can kind of see how this post is lining up here. And I'm actually going to kind of slide this up so it's right in that first position. And what I actually want to do is get this so we're kind of looking at this straight on. So if we look here in our Y position, for example, you can see that that post is kind of coming up over the top just a little bit here. And, you know, that's fine, but we may want that to be a lot more precise here. So, of course, we do have our different controls here. If we do X, we have this position, we have Y, but we want kind of more to keep going around till we get this negative YB. So we can see it because we're much more on here. And then we can easily come in here and start manipulating this cube. So, for example, well, right now this post is going all the way in the ground. We may not need it to show all the way in the ground. And we'll want to probably trim up this top here just a little bit. So what I want to do to get that face there is let's just go to the Z side real quick here. And we want to make sure we have just the face selected of this. So we don't want this whole piece selected here. All right. We simply want just the top face here because we just want to kind of angle this so that way it appears to be here within this wood. So let's go back to our negative Y here. And I'm actually going to just do a rotation. And we're just going to angle that just a little bit so that wood is in there. Now, of course, if it's distorting our shape just a little bit, but that's okay. And you can see, though, that now gets it so it looks like it's angled inside of that wood. Now, we do, of course, probably want to, again, bring this up so that way it's fitting more within this shape. So what I want to do is select this post that I've made. And the easiest way for me to do this, I'm just going to go ahead and click and drag to go ahead and grab all this, make sure I got all my sides selected here. If I don't, hold down the shift key to make sure that those sides are selected. Key thing is that face may not be selected, so remember, we can go into wireframe mode, make sure that face is toggled on there. That looks pretty good. And what I want to do is I'm going to scale this in the Z direction, all right, because I only want it to move up and down. All right, and first thing I want to do before I scale this is I actually want to move it. So we want to, I'm going to just undo here for a second. Remember, this is down below. So I'm going to do a GZ of 1. So that should bring this up now so it's nice and level. And then we can then apply our scale to bring this back down. Oh, but I'm going to make sure I do scaling on the Z axis. And I'm just going to do this by 0.5. Now that should, of course, bring that back down to be the right height. I'm hoping it's going to be. And then let's just go ahead and move this back down in Z, but this time we're going to do down to 0. Nope, let's undo that. GZ of -1. And that kind of gives us a position to work with. I accidentally clicked off here, but GZ. Oh, that's scale. There we go. And I'm just going to go ahead and bring this post right back on down. And of course, we want to make sure that this cube's position is in the right place. We can always check its Z coordinate here. So I'm going to go ahead and just make sure that's set to 0. Let's see, we set to 0, we'll see that's there. If we do -1, you can see how that affects it. Remember, it's going off the center axis here. So wherever you put this will be affected by that value. So I'm just going to do a -0.5. That seems to be right about where I want that to be. And what again, you notice I lost some of the angle in my face here. So now with that face select, let's just go ahead and reapply that rotation here. We're just going to go ahead and rotate this. I'm just going to go ahead and just grab the green handle here just to kind of angle that back in. All right, and that's going to go ahead and give me a good first post that I can use here. From here, it's pretty simple. I can then just go ahead and grab this post here. So I'm just going to use my selection tool to go ahead and grab that post. And I'm just going to go ahead and start duplicating this. And I want to make sure that it is restricted to being along in the Y direction here, because we're going to want to move that. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and just select this guy, make sure I got everything selected. And all those faces are good. Make sure we're in wireframe mode. Make sure we grab that top face there. And then we'll just use Shift D to duplicate this. Make sure it's moving along the Y-axis. And we can go ahead and start adding in these as many as we need to. Oh, I forgot to make sure I restricted that to the Y. So Shift D, restrict to the Y. And of course, like I said, we can then move these as many as we need to or as little as we need to. All right, and there we go. We got a good start to our barn. All right, let's go ahead and add our materials. And so if I go down to materials, let's go ahead and get ready to add some materials. So we probably want a couple material slots in here. So this first material, let's just go ahead and make this a red barn. And so let's make that base color. Let's go ahead and make that nice classic barn red. Maybe we have a different color for the roof, so we're going to go ahead and create a new material here. And maybe you want to have a metal roof. And let's do one more for the wooden posts. All right, so these are all assigned. So let's look at our metal roof. Maybe our metal roof, we want that to be more of a metallic color, so I'm going to go with something a little bit more of a blue. My wooden post, so that's more of a wooden color here, so I'm just going to make sure I'm on wood. And that's probably going to be, again, more of a kind of an orangish tone here. So we try and find something that's a little bit more of a wood-like color. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to first start by selecting my post here. So I'm just going to hold down, I'm just going to grab L and go ahead and just grab each of these here in turn. And once these are all selected here, I can then very easily come in and make sure that the proper material is assigned to them. Now, one thing you know, we don't see it because remember, we need to change our view mode here. And if you notice, right now, I've only assigned that color to that one side here. So I want to make sure that when I get these, that again, we're getting all the sides here of these. So we want to make sure we're grabbing that whole object here. And when we grab that whole object, I'm just going to go ahead and make sure that they all have that same wooden post assigned to it. So if you notice, we did not grab that full object there, so just pressing L, wooden post, assign, and we can easily repeat that process. Now, we want to make sure, of course, that the other materials are appropriately assigned. So if for some reason we didn't get these, again, there's always the option to go through and manually grab them. But let's just go focus on this roof real quick. Now this roof, of course, we want to make this the metal roof, so I can just easily assign that. Same thing with the other materials up here. I can easily come in here and left shift click to go ahead and quickly assign those to the metal roof. And metal roof, assign. There we go. And of course, you'll notice that the barn, of course, has that red. Now we do have the edging here of this that we may want to change because you notice this roof is still red. So we may have to go through and do just some minor touch-ups in here. All right, I'm just going to fix up my post real quick. So I'm just going to press the L key to go ahead and select these guys here because I apparently missed them. And boop, assign. And this guy needs to be assigned as well. So there we go. Those are looking pretty good now. And this is a pretty good barn just to get started. Now, I'm going to go ahead and pause things here, and I want you to go ahead and see if you can complete this scene. Go ahead and try to add yourself a couple more buildings to the scene. Maybe add like a silo or another house or something like that, just to add a little bit more complexity to this scene here. And let's just see what you can come up with. All right, so I went ahead and added a silo in here. I could add some more buildings and stuff in here, but what I really want to show you real quick here is if I go and adjust my view here, and of course you might have to move your camera around a little bit to get this angle that you want. If you notice we have one light source coming down right now, this is our single light right now. Maybe we want to change that. We can, of course, can move this light source around if we need to, or we can change the different type of lighting that we have as well. So this is just things that you might have to play around with. So for example, if I go to a spotlight and I press G, you can see how we can change the lighting source here just to start getting some different view. Or maybe I want to do a sun. You know, of course, you can see this is very bright in comparison because we have a huge strength on it. But if we go to more of a spot lamp here, and I, of course, move this light around, we can of course achieve different results of how we want our scene to actually look. And of course, we have all the other things in here. So for example, I could rotate this light. So maybe I want to have something that's coming down a little bit more directly onto the scene, or I can rotate this in various different angles of however I want this to be. If I had a sun lamp here, of course, you notice right now it's very bright. So if I take that strength, let's say, and cut that in half, you'll notice we'll still get very similar points, or we can do a point lamp. But I think I'm going to stick with the spot lamp for now. Turn that back up to 1,000. And we can, of course, just play around with this till we get the desired kind of feel that we want for our scene. All right, and if I go again back into rendered mode here, I can kind of see how it is. Now you notice here it might be a little far away, so I might just say, I want to grab that light and want to bring that back in here so we get a little bit more illumination here within our scene. All right, and that, of course, is getting us a nice, simple scene. Again, you could add more buildings, add more features in here. I just want to give you a quick overview of how those different things are going to work.